You journey deeper into the murky bog of Hjalmarch, a mire of foul stench and skin-lacquering air. As dusk falls, paranoia rises. Something is watching you. You kneel down and channel your power into Nirn. The Nords of Skyrim may be unfamiliar with such magic, but you were born far from the province of your ancestors. With each breath, you feel more. You feel the thick tree roots pushed deep underground. You feel the light touches of falling snow as they coat the skin of deathbell flower petals. You can even sense a fox not too far ahead. But frustratingly, your magic cannot locate the threat that your instinct is certain draws closer. You pull out your torch, knowing that whatever is out there can already see you. Abominations may think twice before the presence of fire. Eyes like death awaken in the distance behind you, a distance that grows shorter with every breath. Moonlight glints off its scales as it runs closer, its needle more widening, its clawed feet dead silent. A whistling of air sings your doom as the lizard brings its warhammer upon you. You feel your ribs shatter as you pull yourself in an arc to face your attacker. You brace with your shield, feet planted in unsteady soil as his many strikes come hammering down. Wood shatters, then metal, then bone. You are left open to slaughter as the final blow comes in. An agile strike of the handle breaks your nose and leaves you laying broken as the mocking creature stands above you, burrowing into you with its paralyzing gaze. You slip into darkness and time trudges on, but as a single drop of water falls on your bare chest, you suddenly awaken in a dark cave with no memory of how you got there. Your possessions are gone, your bones broken, your pride in the dirt beside you. You quiver as you stand, unsure if you'll ever be able to hold a shield again. Right there and then, you vow to take back what is yours and reclaim your honor through vengeance. The bog vampire known as Breaks Many Shields shall fall. In a video I made in our 5 Things We Want in Elder Scrolls 6 series, I put forth the idea of a Nemesis system similar to that from the Middle-earth games Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. If you want to hear my complete view on how to best modify it for an Elder Scrolls game, I've linked that below. But long story short, my main desire was to have different outcomes for when you're defeated in battle, and for the enemy who bested you to turn into something unique. My exact desire was rather elaborate, and it's easy to ask Bethesda to implement a system with all the bells and whistles Elder Scrolls fans want without having to go to the effort to implement any of it myself. But along comes a champion. Along comes a modder. Welcome to SOSNADS, an eloquent acronym for Shadow of Skyrim, Nemesis, and Alternative Death System. This is a brand new mod created by Cyclonix, who actually reached out to me after being hard at work on the mod and having others tell him something quite similar was being discussed on FudgeMuppet. Understandably, this passion project is not going to add a Nemesis system as advanced as the Middle-earth games that heavily revolve around the feature, but it's still incredibly satisfying and provides the kind of dynamic respawn experience I've been hoping for. It can actually be used with Skyrim Special Edition, Anniversary Edition, and it even works for VR. You also won't need to start a new game for it to work. It runs on existing saves, and even with alternative start mods. SKSE and SkyUI are hard requirements. Soft requirements include SSE engine fixes, Power of 3's tweaks, and MFG fix to fix issues with the vanilla game engine that Shadow of Skyrim will benefit from. Cyclonix and I both agree that dying and then reloading your latest save shouldn't be the only outcome available in a world-class role-playing experience. Instead of killing you, perhaps a bandit chief ties you up and drags you into a mine where no one can rescue you. Maybe they sold you off to another group who believes they can ransom you for more to a local city. Or maybe you black out while fighting through a vampire lair, and after waking you find yourself with a vampiric disease. This may end up turning you into a vampire, a blessing in disguise for some characters, but a nightmare for those more pious. On top of this, imagine how cool it would be if the foe who beat you grew stronger, and it becomes one of your desires to avenge yourself. Perhaps they're using your powerful gear against you, and to defeat them you actually learn alchemy to make a deadly poison, which sends you down an unexpectedly enjoyable path for your build you would have otherwise not taken. The Shadow of Skyrim mod provides a continuous gameplay experience by retroactively turning any enemy who defeats you, vanilla or mod added, into a nemesis with a unique name, increased stats, a larger physical size, and a unique buff chosen from a long list of options. The idea here is that you only remember the generic NPC's name after being bested. It also makes the world feel more alive as other NPCs can grow stronger and gain renown, not just you. Their name is chosen from a lore-friendly list of names, with their new title corresponding to a related buff. It can be random, though it can also be contextual. For example, if your enemy is armored, he could come back as Ustash, the Spiked One, with the Armor of Thorns buff that makes enemies pay in blood for each landed melee strike. When defeated, you also gain a debuff until you avenge yourself, and this can also be based on how you died. For example, you may gain the Shield Shattered drawback if you were defeated while blocking. Your shield arm is weakened, your shield may drop when blocking. And yes, I've dropped it multiple times while fighting different people, including my nemesis. It's also worth mentioning that in order to prevent issues, enemies that are quest related, essential, or summoned cannot become your nemesis. When you actually defeat your nemesis, you not only wipe away the negative, but also gain a positive effect from a list of buffs, one being Artful Deflection. Blocking is an art. Even the hardest physical strike can be deflected if timed properly. The benefit you receive is usually a less powerful version of the buff the nemesis had. If your nemesis is killed by someone else or by accidental or natural factors, your debuff will be removed, but you won't gain any reward buff. After an enemy defeats you, they can also take some of your gear. This includes weapons, armor, and gold, but doesn't include quest items. Your gear will actually be used against you if your nemesis deems it strategic. So if they're wearing steel armor and they take ebony armor from your body, you'll likely return to find them clad in your favorite ebony gear, benefiting from the increased protection. I was quite surprised to find my nemesis wielding the deadly unique sword Chillrend that she pillaged from my inventory. Such a dynamic experience made the battle much tougher and also far more enjoyable. It's funny how well it actually made me feel emotionally invested in my foe. I just really wanted to slay them and get Chillrend back. You also become more motivated to do so to remove your debuff. You'll also notice a backpack where you died, but it tends to act as a kind of tombstone almost, showing the spot of your defeat, with the nemesis actually holding your gear themselves. Though if you die by accident, such as falling off a cliff, then your gear will be in the backpack. But before you return to slay your nemesis, the mod does something special. It changes your location, and provides a message on screen explaining what occurred after your defeat. You may have been dragged to a cave full of bandits where you'll have to escape, or be rescued and taken back to the comfort of a local town or temple. Ultimately, this helps encourage exploration as you respawn in new places you may not have planned to visit. In most cases, you will respawn somewhere closer to where you died versus being far away. In some rarer instances, you respawn somewhere completely random, but the text that pops up does explain what has happened to your character. You'll also get immersive directions as a miscellaneous quest to return to the place of your defeat, such as return to the ritual stone in Whiterun Hold, as well as the objective of taking down your nemesis. Not only does the mod work with modded enemies, but also modded locations, abilities, and perks. Also, if the nemesis bests you more than once, they won't become even more powerful, though the mod might suggest you change up your approach because clearly it hasn't been working. You may never have thought about it, but creatures can also become a nemesis of yours, becoming more powerful and gaining a 20% size increase with default settings. Perhaps you have a feud with a measly skeleton after narrowly escaping bandits and its arrow delivered the final blow. Or maybe that frost troll on the way to High Hrothgar becomes more infamous for you than ever before. The debuff you can get from this can also be situational. For example, you may develop a fear of the undead after being defeated by a Draugr Deathlord. This will make you weak against all undead foes until you avenge yourself. A very important thing to consider is that you can have up to 5 nemesis at a time, and you've only got 5 slots for buffs or debuffs. This means that if you have 3 debuffs and 2 reward buffs, you'll actually lose your oldest reward buff if an enemy defeats you and a new nemesis comes into play, leaving you with just 1 buff and 4 debuffs. So the positive player buffs you get are permanent in the sense that they're a constant effect with no timer on them, but they will get replaced if they get slotted out of the 5 buff or debuff system. Having 5 nemesis at once is definitely not desirable, as you'd be playing with a lot of drawbacks. Once all 5 slots are full, you won't be able to gain a new Nemesis, and this is actually done to prevent the player from getting rid of undesirable debuffs on purpose by simply dying over and over again to get better ones. In the tracker tab in the mod menu, you can also see any dropped backpacks you have. There's room for 10 slots just in case you have 5 Nemesis slots full and then have an environmental death. Maybe a trap kills you. Going over 10 backpack slots will cause your oldest backpack to disappear, but at that stage it's pretty clear you didn't care about whatever was in it anyway. If there's an emergency, you can use a debug setting in the menu to open the backpack from there and get what you want. When you're defeated in battle, there's actually a bleed out timer. There's a standard shorter one just so you can see enemies for a bit after you're defeated, and it also exists in case you have mods on that allow you to revive, perhaps via perks. Then there's extra bleed out time if you have a follower. Followers can actually revive you if they defeat the enemies around within a time frame set in the mod menu. This brings back some of your health and you won't suffer any penalties. If you aren't revived in time or your follower is bested, then you will gain a Nemesis and respawn somewhere else as usual, but don't worry, your followers will eventually find their way back to you. Guards defeating you is another fun event. You may awake to find you've been arrested and thrown in jail. You can serve your sentence or do a jailbreak as usual, or if the jails are full, you may respawn outside the entrance. Funnily enough, corrupt guards can actually skim weapons, boots, and gauntlets from you in the process, wearing them publicly. You'll have to steal it back or assassinate them. If that goes against your character's roleplaying, I'd suspiciously ask what you were doing being killed by a guard in the first place. Citizen's arrest is also a listed feature, and what this means is that a citizen defeating you, if you have a bounty at or above what's listed in the mod menu, may also send you to jail. You would have heard me mention menu settings a few times, and I want to emphasize that it really is your rules at the end of the day. You can use the menu to not only view your nemesis, buffs, debuffs, and backpacks, but also to alter just about everything about the mod. You can modify how high of a level above you enemies need to be before being excluded from being a nemesis, as well as change whether you will receive a buff from them based on their level. The default settings stop nemesis below your level from being able to provide you with a reward, as they'd be too easy to farm buffs from. You can change size and stat boosts, and I tend to like the default settings, to be honest. The way I look at the size increase is that my character fears their nemesis, and therefore they appear slightly bigger to them due to the psychological impact defeat had. You could drag it to 5% if you wanted. That said, there's also a giant's blood buff which makes them even bigger than this. The mod menu also lets you modify your bleed out time and toggle revivals, as well as decide if you want your items to fall to the ground when you're defeated. Things like your helmet, weapons, or shield, although it's all purely cosmetic with that. You can toggle whether nemesis use your items, as well as whether you'll drop items on an accidental defeat. This just refers to whether or not you'll want to have to go get gear from a backpack if you fall off a cliff and respawn somewhere else, or if you'd prefer to not lose any items in that case at all. You can also mess around with the possible inventory and gold percentage size drops, which by the way are chosen at random between the set range, and can also change the percentage chance of dropping different types of equipped gear. If there's a ring you absolutely refuse to drop, or a sword that you're pretending is bound to you for role-playing reasons, knock those down to 0. Just remember you can always go get your items back. It's kind of the whole point here. I personally liked the default settings there because I found it really forced me to want to go back and track down this adversary and reclaim not only my honor, but also my hard-earned gear. Finally, you can choose if you want your respawn location to be situational or just be the last location or bed you were in, as well as how much time passes and if the weather changes. You can change the chance of it being a random location too, as well as whether the location will be hostile. The invulnerability timer is how long you can't take damage from after you respawn, and do consider you won't respawn with all of your health. The default is 50%, but again you can change that however you see fit. The main reason there's this timer there at all is because sometimes you'll wake up in a cave full of bandits and want to escape. For characters who are good at stealth, that'll be easy, but if you don't want to have them all turn on you and kill you before you get a chance, that's what that's there for. You can turn off the guard defeat imprisonment setting I mentioned just before, as well as their ability to skim items from you, and also at what bounty a citizen defeat will send you to jail. The modder behind it all, Cyclonix, is constantly working hard behind the scenes to polish the systems of the mod so it runs as smoothly as possible, but he does have plans to eventually flesh out the content beyond its current state, adding more Nemesis titles, buffs and debuffs, respawn situations, and more. So a huge thanks to Cyclonics for making such a cool mod that we wanted at FudgeMuppet and giving me early access so I could see what it's all about and help test things out. The mod is out now and you can download it using the link in the description below. Also, thank you so much for watching this video and supporting our love for Skyrim mods and the Elder Scrolls as a whole. My name is Michael, you've been watching FudgeMuppet, and I look forward to nerding out with you again in the next video.